Hello, I'm Dr. Oren, Doctor of Transformation, that is. I'm licensed by the Uncanny Valley Medical Board as a doctor specializing in species transformation. And I'm legally required to inform you that I am not a medical doctor in the physical world. But in headspace, practicing on altars, I'm golden. Better than golden. I'm platinum. I'm uranium, which probably isn't a good thing because then I would be toxic. But in any case, I'm really good. I can honestly say that I am the best there is at what I do. But since I seem to be the only transformation hypnosis specialist on YouTube, that was pretty much a certainty. You may be wondering, why is a guy named Otter a reindeer? Well, that's a very good question. Moving on to the next topic. Okay, but seriously, because it's fun. That's why I do what I do. I got into transformations purely because it's enjoyable. I turned myself into a were-reindeer a few years back, and I've been loving it ever since. And if a dog can do a baking show, if a kangaroo can talk about cosplaying, then certainly I can teach hypnosis as a reindeer. Am I right? I'm sure you agree, or you wouldn't still be watching. You are still watching, right? So obviously, hypnosis is one of my principal methods of transformation. And since I believe that transformation should be readily available to everyone, I also believe that hypnosis should be available to everyone. Before we begin, though, I need to advise you to check the laws in your country or state. Some places require a license to practice on others, some don't. Where I live, a license is required for hypnotherapy. In any case, there's no law against learning. You have to learn before you can do, naturally. Now, my motto is question everything, so I encourage you not to simply take my word for anything, but do your own research. There's a lot of mumbo-jumbo out there regarding hypnosis, and I want you to question all of it to be sure you're getting the truth. In this series, we're going to cover 5 areas of hypnosis. In order: introductions, inductions, commands, extras, and endings. And finally, a lesson covering general questions. So without further ado, here is the lesson on introductions, also called the pre-talk. Now, some hypnotists like to just skip this part, and you can if you're really in a rush, but I wouldn't advise it. A good pre-talk makes the whole process easier in many ways. In my pre-talks, I like to cover 8 specific topics, and a helpful mnemonic for remembering them is SIPRIDIE, which really isn't helpful now that I hear myself saying it out loud. Let's change that a little bit. Sip red dye, I do. There, that's a little better. Now, you don't have to include the same things I do. There is no one right way to do this, but this is the combination which I have found to be most effective. S is for sponsorship. Now, absolutely, you don't have to include this, but I find it helps build trust when you start out by being completely upfront about who's paying for this routine. Sometimes we have private sponsors, sometimes the sponsor is a business or an artistic endeavor, and I'm doing a little commercial, more or less. I do this because I want to keep the routines 100% free to the listener, and I want to make sure that they know it's free. Hypnosis is so much easier when you don't have to worry about the bill. I is for the introduction proper. Just a simple greeting and giving of the name. This helps to create a friendly rapport and tells the listener exactly who their hypnotist is today. Just that simple hi or hello can go a long way toward creating that atmosphere of trust. You're not simply a stranger coldly doing business. You're a friend who's going to be taking care of this person. That's the feeling I always want to convey. P is for purpose. What are you trying to accomplish in this routine? Many times I've started listening to a routine and not liked the direction it's gone. So when I listen to others' routines, I tend to be a little guarded. That's something you absolutely don't want. That's why I tell the listener exactly what is going to happen. And if it's a transformation, I always include the disclaimer, to your own perception. I don't suppose anyone thinks I'm going to actually change them bodily into a squirrel, but I want to be honest. Although with altars, I can transform them bodily. It's just their virtual body that gets changed, which I suppose it's true for anyone, but with alters we can actually see each other's virtual bodies, but I digress. Now, if I have anything therapeutic in the routine, I also include the disclaimer that I am not a licensed hypnotherapist. My state requires a license to practice hypnotherapy. I do not have one. I'm completely upfront about that, as anyone should be. Anyone is invited to use those routines, but at their own risk. There's really no risk involved, at least not appreciably, but I don't expect the government to understand that. They're pretty weird about those things. In any case, you want that feeling of complete openness and honesty. Now, on to the red part. RE is for reassurance. This is, as far as I'm concerned, the single most important part of the introduction. Your listener needs to feel safe. They need to know that there's nothing in this whole process that's lying in wait for them, like some sort of hypnosis demon waiting to snatch their soul. That's definitely not a thing. I start by explaining what hypnosis is and what it is not. It's not magic. It's not telepathy. It's not mind control. Hypnosis is actually part of how our minds normally function. The average person goes into brief trances many times per day. There's nothing weird or dark about it. No one is taking possession of anyone's mind. I wouldn't do that anyway. Now, some folks are into that. I don't know why. I won't even suggest it because to me that's an immediate balk. You'll hear me use that word quite a bit. A balk is anything that makes the subject's defenses go up, makes them not want to go into trance or not do what you say. It's important to remember that all hypnosis is voluntary in the end. And you might be able to put someone in a trance without their knowledge, but you'll never get them to do anything they don't want to do. I wouldn't do that anyway, and I tell them that. I will never make them do anything they don't want to do. Hypnosis is about taking greater control over your own mind. And I always tell them that if at any point they don't like what I'm doing, they can stop the process right there. That gives them a legitimate out, and hopefully by knowing that they can always come out of trance if they need to, you'll leave them feeling like they don't have to worry about it, so their guard remains down. And I don't always include this, but I sometimes like to tell my listener that it's impossible to stay in trance forever. Trance is a state of consciousness. Our brains have to change states every few hours anyway. If they don't come out on cue, they'll either wake up or fall asleep sooner or later. In fact, some of my routines capitalize on that by sending the listener into a natural sleep at the end. Just to restate the obvious, you can never get stuck in trance any more than you can get stuck in sleep. Next, we have a couple of D's. These are both for don't. Don't do this while driving or doing anything requiring concentration. Personally, I have gotten myself to the point where I can safely drive and enjoy a good hypnotic TF at the same time, but that is something I absolutely do not recommend. For the average person, that's a good way to have an accident. Don't go into trance with emotional baggage. I often say hypnosis is as safe as sleep, and that's totally true. Sleep isn't dangerous, but if you sleep on negative feelings, you can have nightmares, and hypnosis carries a similar risk. If you go into trance with bad feelings bottled up, they can come flooding out all at once. That's called an abreaction, and it's no fun. Hypnosis should be as positive as possible. So I always tell my listeners that if they need a few minutes to sort out their heads, by all means, go and take as long as they need. I'll still be here. Okay, sip, red, die. So next is YE. That stands for yes, as in, yes, it will work. One of the biggest impediments to going into trance is believing that you can't do it. You want to have your listener believing that they can, and indeed they can. They just might take a little longer than others. Now, when you're working in person and one-on-one, you can tailor your induction and put your subject into trance in whatever way is best for them. My routines are pre-recorded, so I can't do that. But one thing I can do is maximize their confidence. I tell them that going into trance is an acquired skill, and the more they do it, the easier it will get. I also point out that like falling asleep or trying not to think about a flamingo in a hat. The harder you try, the worse you'll fail. The key is to just let it happen to you. And of course, I ask them not to complain because that not only chafes my cookies, to mix a metaphor, but it erodes the confidence of all my other listeners as well. So I want to give them every chance to make it work. We'll get into that a bit more in the section on inductions. And finally, the I is for instructions. Ask the listener to sit or lie still. I always tell them that they don't have to be frozen. Once they're in trance, they will most likely remain unmoving anyhow. But I let them know that they're free to do whatever they have to do to be comfortable. Cough, scratch, shift your weight, whatever. This makes the induction phase easier because they don't feel like they're obligated to stay stock still and remain uncomfortable. I also tell them that it's best if their neck is supported because if their head flops around, it can get really uncomfortable. Personally, an uncomfortable neck is a balk for me, so I try to avoid it. And of course, there's do. Sip red dye, I do. This one isn't a particular section, it's just something that you should weave throughout your intro. Do your best to inspire confidence. This is where your listener gets a taste of what everything to come is going to be like. They have to feel that you know what you're doing, that you're not going to make a mistake, you're not going to laugh at them or do anything unethical. You're there as a friend and a guide, so let them know without a doubt that you're trustworthy and competent. Now, you don't have to go and include every step that I've mentioned. You don't have to go in the same order. Your intro can go any number of ways, so don't feel that you have to follow my example. But here is a completed induction so that you can get some idea of how to put yours together. This routine is brought to you courtesy of the generosity of Buttercup Raccoon. Hi, my name is Oren, and I'll be your hypnotist today. The purpose of this routine is to allow you to experience a transformation to your own senses into a dolphin. Now, as always, before we start, I'd like to give you my reassurances that hypnosis is perfectly safe. It's as safe as sleep. It's not magic or mind control. I wouldn't try to control your mind anyway. You're going to be in charge the entire time, and if at any point you don't like what I'm doing, you're free to stop the process then and there. Now, a couple of caveats. I would like to advise you don't do this if you're carrying any emotional baggage. Doing so can negatively impact your hypnosis experience and cause negative emotions to come flooding out all at once. We don't want this to happen because hypnosis should be fun and safe. So, if you need a moment to go sort out your head, please take as long as you need. I'll be right here. And of course, don't do this while driving or doing any task which requires concentration. Now, if you should experience any trouble going into trance, I'd like to assure you that, yes, this will work eventually. Some people just take a little bit longer than others. So if you're not able to do so right away, keep working at it. Don't try to go into trance so much as let it happen to you. Because just like falling asleep, it's something that you won't succeed at if you're really trying. But do go back and give it another go, because I assure you everyone can be hypnotized. So please, please, please do not comment in the doobly-doo that it didn't work. Keep doing it. It will work. Going into trance is an acquired skill. Now, if you're ready to begin, I'd like you to be either sitting down or lying down in a position where your head is supported so that your head doesn't flop when you relax your neck. We want you to be as comfortable as possible. So if you feel the need to scratch an itch, shift your weight, or whatever, anything you need to do to be comfortable, just go ahead and do that. Now, if you're ready, we'll begin. And there you have it. Now again, you don't have to do everything exactly as I did it, but hopefully my example will give you something that you can build on. I hope this has been helpful, and I'd like to thank you for joining me today. For our next lesson, we're going to be learning about inductions. See you then.